This is Story Robot. Welcome to r/RegularRevenge. Our first story of today is, you call yourself my bestie, then have the nerve to tell me to get over it when you attempt to date my ex? Sure, I'll get over it. But first, background info. When I was in high school, I had two best friends of several years who I allowed to treat me like a scourge to society. If I'm being honest, I was their duff, the designated ugly fat friend. They'd flirt with guys they knew I liked, leave me out, use me for emotional support and rides to places, and they were never there for me when I needed them. If I dared to bring up any of the mistreatment, I got gaslit, sexual assault. I'll never forget when I got assaulted by a guy one of them liked and she victim blamed me, telling me I should have just walked away. I can hardly detail all the beep I was put through without rambling for hours, so essentially, these beeps sucked. This story concerns only one of them, we'll call her Nina. Nina loved getting involved with guys I liked. If I started talking to a guy, told her I had a crush on him, or otherwise expressed interest, she'd be in his face within days. Call me old-fashioned, but I believe in loyalty and girl code. I didn't do these things to her, in fact she'd be very angry if I did, so why do them to me? But, still, I allowed her to get away with it and trudged on through the friendship. One night, in the middle of a casual group chat conversation, Nina sends a text saying she needed to tell me something. I already knew what the hell was coming, I mean even Stevie Wonder could see this level of disrespect. You see, for months prior, I'd caught glimpses of Nina getting quite cozy with my ex, we'll call him Billy. I'd been gaslit so much that at the time I thought I was just overthinking, but there were hard eyes being exchanged in text messages, photos being posted of the two hugging and kissing, he even had her social media passwords. All kinds of crazy beep going on, they were blatantly playing in my face. This Billy guy wasn't beep either. He cheated on me countless times, embarrassed me publicly, spread rumors about me that followed me for years, tried to get me jumped, and loads more traumatizing beep I've just barely recovered from. But, lo and behold, Nina tells me that she likes Billy, and that the two are getting ready to date. She then has the audacity to tell me that I need to get over it before my sad beep could even muster up a response. And you know what? In true dumb beep fashion, I genuinely was going to push my feelings aside for the umpteenth time and get over it. If I haven't already made this painfully obvious, I struggled with low self-esteem. I didn't think I could find better friends, or that I was worthy of anything better. I was heartbroken. Suddenly, it hit me like a truck. The years of being disregarded, of being treated like an afterthought, of being disrespected. I don't know what happened. Possibly someone had snuck a can of spinach in my mouth while I wasn't paying attention or some beep. All I know is, you could have called me Popeye the Sailor Man the way I experienced that sudden burst of strength. I began maniacally typing up the most disrespectful, hate-fueled, self-esteem crushing paragraph I'd ever had the pleasure of writing. To say I ripped Nina a new one would be an understatement. Venom flowed from my fingertips. I mean it was so bad I made the girl cry. Something I never knew I was capable of. I remember telling her that she was so insecure that she limited herself to guys I'd already tried, but she could never keep them around because she lacked personality and was boring. Can't say I'm proud, but hey. Typically, I'd be the one crying in situations like these, and now I wasn't. Witnesses say the tables turned so hard that every piece of silverware nearly went flying into her neck. Still, I was enraged. The tears Nina shed weren't enough, I wanted blood. I immediately began conjuring up a paragraph of vicious lies that I would then send to the ex in question, Billy. I told him how much I loved and missed him, how I wanted to try again and make things work. To my surprise, he was beeping thrilled. We immediately got back together. Nina was a wreck. She'd just lost the best friend she'd ever have, and her potential boyfriend all in one night. Mutual friends of ours were texting me for days to let me know how upset she was. All I could see were the two big beep pigeons I'd hit with one stone. I took Billy on a wild goose chase for a month. Admittedly, I cheated on him and played with his emotions just because I knew I could. He was in shambles over me, the same way I had been over him in the past. Not condoning this behavior, but I was an angry high schooler and he honestly had done far worse. I considered this payback for all the cheating, lies, and embarrassment I endured while with him. Just when I thought my circumstances couldn't get any better, a very cute and popular guy, who I never thought would look my way, began showing interest in me. Coincidentally, he had rejected Nina a couple months prior. I eventually left Billy high and dry for him, and never spoke to either of my toxic beep friends again. For years I thought I couldn't live without them, just for me to end up thriving on my own and in a relationship with one of the cutest guys in the school. Moral of the story? I'm not sure. Never let people mistreat you. Curse your beepy friends out. Our final story of today is, revenge on home buyers. Last year Thanksgiving a group of us were together and a 30-something couple were talking about how much they were screwing over the owner of their soon-to-be new house. They had negotiated back and forth for a low price, had asked for several contingencies, had nickel and dimed every last thing they could out of the inspection. At one point the new owner had even threatened to walk away from the deal. They were pretty proud of their tactics and how great their realtor was. One of the over 55 people finally laughed and said, "You aren't going to come out ahead like you think you are, there are consequences for your actions. Trust me, the seller always wins." She then told the story of her first house. She and her husband saved and scraped for years, before they were able to buy a 100-year-old fixed-upper. This was in the 1990s and interest rates were higher. They bought during a seller's market. A major employer in their town closed, relocated. The town was plunged into a recession. No jobs, people moved away and housing prices dropped. 4 years later she and her husband are getting a divorce. It is now a buyer's market. Their house sits on the market for over a year. Finally, they get an offer. The buyer's realtor was related to them and was a shrew. The offer was less than what they paid for the house, and they had made several costly upgrades. The buyer tried asking for several changes and cashback at closing. After they did the inspection, they kept demanding for things to be done. They started with all the lower cost things. New smoke detectors, snaking a drain, and every 2 to 3 days, it was something else they wanted done. Finally, she and her husband had to tell her realtor they had no money left. They couldn't afford what the buyer was asking for and they had no choice but to let the buyer out of the contract. The buyer backed off the repairs, but then wanted a couple pieces of furniture that were family antiques. When that didn't work, they wanted a lower price. She and her ex were about one step from a nervous breakdown and were convinced the buyers would walk. She told a few more stories about how the buyers and inspector were late an hour for the inspection. They brought their dogs in the house. She was very allergic. The dogs peed and pooped in an area that had new carpet, etc. She lived in a state where buyers and sellers all meet around a table in a lawyer's office for closing at the same time. Roughly an hour before that meeting the sellers and realtor do a final walkthrough. The night, early morning, while it was still dark. Before closing she dumped around 100 gallons, 30 pounds of salt water on the grass and bushes. She turned down the temperature on the water heater. She replaced toilet paper rolls with almost empty ones. The next morning she and a very good friend sat a half a block away and waited for them to finish the inspection. Once they left, the friend went into the house. She waited a few minutes and drove to the closing. The new owners were about 10 minutes early to the signing and she was about 5 minutes late. She was very slow about signing the papers and a couple of times asked to have things repeated. While she was signing things, her friend was removing a couple of boards in the attic and adding a mama mouse and her new litter to the attic. He also removed some lattice work and threw a termite's nest under the front porch. Then he sprayed some sugar water around the coal chute and exterior basement cellar entrance. Even she knew turning down the temperature on the water heater was petty, but she also hoped that even the one cold shower would start their day off lousy. She moved out of the area, but a year later when she was visiting, the grass had not recovered. She noticed the attic windows had all been replaced and a couple of old huge trees were trimmed back. 3 years later, there was a new front porch. This was an old house with a wraparound front porch, so no cheap fix. She later heard the people who bought the house lost it through bankruptcy in less than 5 years. Fast forward to this year at Thanksgiving. We were smaller in number, but the same couple was there. They were a bit deflated. While the previous owners didn't do anything quite as bad as the woman in her 50s, it was a pretty tight-knit neighborhood. All of the neighbors had heard blow-by-blow details of their negotiation tactics. They were very cool to them upon meeting and even a year later they don't feel very welcome. The neighbors will gather in the street and visit, now with some distancing. Whenever they try to walk over and join the conversation, the group breaks up. They don't think it's fair that the neighborhood kids don't play with their kids. One of the more blunt neighbors told the husband, "Your child is welcome to play with my kids in my house. But, I don't want my kids around you. They are considering moving again. They aren't bad people, but it reminded me that buying a house may be a business transaction. But, like the woman said, there's consequences for every action." Thank you for watching. Error. Problem detected. Not enough subscribers. Please subscribe, like and comment.